Say, have you ever had a friend that you've known for your whole life get involved in a tragic accident only to come out of it with their mental state bumped back by 11 years? You can imagine the stress, the humiliation, and the frustration that comes with it. Such is the tale of a girl named Nanaka Kurisato in the anime Nanaka 617. Nanaka 617 is a 12-volume manga series written by Ken Yagami, which in turn was made into a 12-episode anime series which was also directed by him. The story is about a boy named Nenji Nagihara who has to look after his childhood friend after suffering a head injury that caused her to mentally regress back to that of a 6-year-old. Now I'm going to have to be honest, this review may be shorter than I originally wanted it to be due to the fact that for some reason I can't seem to find that much information on this anime. Even Wikipedia has only 2 to 3 sentences describing each of the characters. How am I supposed to make a 15 to 20 minute in-depth review on an anime in which I can only find a picture and a paragraph worth of information on? I'll try my best, but how exactly does this all happen? Let's take a look and find out. So our story starts with our main character Nanaka watching an old anime show. Her friend Nenji comes over to take her to school, but finds out that she is too glued to the TV. Just a second. Did I miss an episode or something? No, it's episode 1, alright. What's going on here? So yeah, we cut to Nenji Nagihara getting into a rather one-sided fight between him and another delinquent student.
Fight! Flawless victory.
Are you okay?
As he leaves victorious, he runs into his friend Nanaka, who berates him about his childish behavior. Nenji, of course, decides to ignore her and heads for school.
Nenji, you're like a kid.
It's like talking to a wall, this one. So we cut to PE class, where rather than participating with the other students, she spends most of her time to herself studying day in and day out. But unfortunately, page 5698 proves to be too much for her. Just to let you know, overstudying has been known to kill people. Don't believe me? Just ask half.com.
This proved to be too much. Soon Louis XIV was a Cubist king, and French peasants were storming one of Dolly's worlds, screaming for democracy. Eventually, Joanna went insane, and now spends her time in a straitjacket, having flashbacks of Americans storming the beaches of Van Gogh.
But that doesn't stop her from going right back into studying as soon as she regains consciousness.
Hey! What the hell? All that just so you could ditch your class?
Nenji. This is a nurse's office, you know.
You're always acting self-centered like this, Nanaka. No wonder you have trouble getting along with everyone.
Maybe you should be focusing more on yourself and less on me, Nenji. I have a clear vision for my future. That's why I try hard to do what's necessary to achieve my goals and choose not to engage in things that would be meaningless.
Jeez, lady, there's much more to life than just plowing your face in a book all day.
But you just couldn't pass up the chance to be a snob.
So after school, he gets into yet another fight by the same person he fought earlier, only to get scolded by Nanaka once again. However, this time around, he actually loses it and snaps at her. I'm sure you are going to regret those words, buddy.
I think it's time this friendship ended! Right here, right now! I never want to see your face again!
And go on!
So douchebag of the year goes to... Nenji Nagihara from Nanaka 617.
Here he is, the biggest douche of the universe. In all the galaxies, there's no bigger douche than you. You've reached the top, the pinnacle of douchedom. Good going, douche, your dreams have come true.
Shocked by Nenji's cold words, she faints and falls down a flight of stairs. It isn't shown, but it is implied that she landed on her head.
How else can you explain how she lost 11 years of her memory, reverting her back to the mentality of a 6-year-old?
Feeling responsible for Nanaka's condition, Nenji decides to watch over her at school and make sure her condition remains confidential. However... Nanaka Kurisato is a 17-year-old girl with a goal of going to the best college in the country. As a result, she is seen constantly studying. So as you can imagine, she has very few friends. In fact, most of her fellow students see her as antisocial, so they usually keep their distance from her. 6-year-old Nanaka is, however, more outgoing and enthusiastic. Her fellow students at first are bewildered by Nanaka's strange behavior, in fact tease her for it, but she quickly gains favor with them for her more outgoing and persistent personality. She also has an obsession with a TV anime show called Magical Domiko, which along with Nanaka's childish behavior causes new levels of frustration and humiliation for Nenji. Nenji Nagihara is Nanaka's classmate and childhood friend. He is a delinquent who often gets into fights with other male students. Thus, he is constantly ridiculed and lectured by Nanaka for his behavior. However, after Nanaka's accident, he begins to act more mature. He is asked by Nanaka's father to look out for her at school and make sure no one discovers her condition. And when it comes to taking care of this kid, that's easier said than done.
Besides, how are you going to hide something that is that obvious? Don't you think the kids at school are going to wonder why Nanaka is acting so immaturely? Might as well tell them what's really going on. They're bound to figure it out sooner or later.
Speaking of which, there's Yuriko Amemiya. She's an honor student who initially sees Nanaka as a rival and will often scheme against her. She bullies Nanaka but discovers Nanaka's secret by accident. Nenji entrusts her to help keep Nanaka's secret, and as she gets to know both of them better, she falls in love with Nenji and also becomes kinder to Nanaka. I don't remember there being too much nudity. I can recall a couple scenes where characters are taking a bath, but that's as much as I can recall. Thus, I will give this 1 star for nudity. Crude humor is pretty laid back as well. Most of the crude humor in this show revolves around 6-year-old Nanaka trying to understand adult situations. Thus, I will give this 1 star for crude humor as well. Most of the show's language and violence mostly revolves around Nenji and his impatient attitude and the other characters he gets into fights with. Also, one of Nenji's rivals has a little sister who likes to whack people on the head that she sees as incompetent with her wooden sword. Thus, I will give this 2 stars for both language and violence. This is one of those shows that has dual personalities. At its core, it's a light and fluffy coming-of-age story full of comical mishaps, but more subtly, it's a psychological drama about when or even if Nanaka's memories will return and she will return to being a normal 17-year-old girl again. It has some funny moments, but some of the humor in this show utilizes rather juvenile gag humor involving Nanaka's mental state.
I mean, could you imagine what would happen if, say, Mark Zuckerberg hit his head and went back 11 years? I would like to see the media's reaction after the truckloads of toys and candy arrive.
Much of this show's humor revolves around 6-year-old Nanaka trying to adapt to the life of being an adult, such as being in a piano concert or going on dates. Another source of humor comes from the reactions of the other people around her. She is often taken advantage of due to her naive nature, but somehow is able to escape any sticky situation, either with assistance from Nenji or Amemiya, or through pure luck. This serves to further irritate her enemies, but each time their plans get grander, so does the eventual backfiring. Halfway through, the show tries to mix things up a bit by having Nanaka go through the Jekyll and Hyde syndrome, where she frequently fluctuates between her 6-year-old self and her 17-year-old self.
Makes me wonder if they'll start talking to each other via answering machine, like that Harumi Chono chick from Paranoia Agent.
Why don't you just admit it now? You're the fake. You know what I mean. I want to be free too. You know what I mean. I want to be... You know what I mean. You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
You know what I mean. I want to be F-R-E-E.
While this makes for an interesting change of pace, the anime suffers from a rather lackluster ending in which very little of the plot is actually resolved. And while having some sense of humor to it, the show's rather episodic nature doesn't leave you clamoring for the controller in anticipation for what happens next. Along with a rather hit-or-miss sense of humor, this makes the anime kind of boring at times. Thus, I will give the story a 3 out of 5. The soundtrack is good, but apart from the opening and ending themes, the music seems rather mediocre and childish. The voice acting isn't too bad, but at times seems rather flat and doesn't seem to stand out much, particularly with the secondary characters, even though the anime has a few very talented voice actors behind it. Thus, I will give soundtrack a 3 out of 5. The animation is pretty average as well. The series is bright and colorful with clean lines and shading and is well maintained. Unfortunately, the animation feels pretty flat at times. But my biggest gripe is having to watch a show with a 4:3 aspect ratio on a 16:9 television.
You know, I hated letterboxing because it doesn't utilize the entire screen of a 4:3 TV, but I never imagined that I would hate it the other way around as well.
Thus, I will give animation a 3 out of 5. Since this is more of a situation comedy, many of the characters do develop in the course of the series, but not by a whole lot. The characters aren't bad, although some of their personalities tend to be kind of irritating, especially a certain 5-year-old girl that has a romantic interest in a 17-year-old male character.
Is it just me, or do I smell the potential for a ton of pedophilia jokes in here?
Another problem with these characters is that their personalities kind of tend to be bland and uninteresting at times, especially 17-year-old Nanaka.
I mean, jeez, I've seen a stack of bricks more interesting than this character.
So I will give characters a 3 out of 5. This anime has a nice nostalgic charm to it, but it doesn't hold out very much. It's not bad, but it's not exactly good either. It's one of those shows that you see once and easily forget about later, whether you liked it or not. There are times that this anime is funny, but there are also times this anime can get outright boring. So you may want to take a look at it on Crunchyroll before you go setting out to buy this one. Thus, I will give Nanaka 617, 3 style points, and an overall rating of 6 out of 10.
So, until next time, this is the American Anime Otaku, signing out.